Growth is one of the distinguishing qualities of the human race. There's always that inward craving to become a better person as time goes by. Here is a show on peer mentorship that focuses on personal growth, whose positive effects will be manifested in the societies and communities where these people and individuals stay. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome to yet another episode of the IHNDY series. Sam is my name. Thank you for always coming here to learn with us. And we are really happy and glad to serve you, to share this knowledge that we have from day to day so that you also can learn and grow. Now, sex. What an unfailing catchphrase. You know, we live in a society that is super and hypersexualized. Sex is always the talk of the day or even an action of the day. So we are here to talk about sexual morality among young adults. With me here is someone who is passionate about sexual morality. She'll share more about herself as the conversation goes on and on. Anyway, allow me to introduce to you. Hi.
Hi.
Mambo?
Poa.
Kofiti?
Sana.
Thank you for coming to the show to talk about some sensitive issues. I admire your audacity.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Now, you mind introducing yourself to the audience? A brief description of who you are and what you do.
My name is Irene Githua. Currently a BA student at the Tangaza University College, pursuing a Bachelor of Arts in Counselling Psychology.
Let's just kick it off. We want to talk about sexual morality among young adults.
Yeah.
You mind defining some key concepts of this conversation?
So, sexual morality among young adults. So I'm assuming some of the concepts would be like sexual morality, which has like a traditional meaning. If you ask an old person what they think about sexual morality, they would say they basically base it on a concept of like a minimalist, like sex before marriage is wrong. To them, that's basically what sexual morality would mean to them. But of course, that would include prostitution, it would include incest, it would include sex with an animal, unwanted pregnancy. So back traditionally, it would mean sex without marriage is wrong. But I think it's basically the ethics that are used in evaluation of sexual behavior. That's what we would define sexual morality as, yeah. So it would either be in the perspective of social, philosophical, or...
So since you're talking about just the ethics that define the sexual life of a human being, you've talked of early pregnancies, unwanted early pregnancies before marriage.
Yeah.
You mind shedding some more light on it? Like, what, in your opinion, is the biggest reason and cause for unwanted pregnancies, and what are some of the possible effects of it?
Of course, among adolescents, right?
Yeah,
or
among
young adults. Sorry. I think the one problem that I would say would cause a lot of unwanted pregnancies is the lack of education. I think there's a lot of sex education that needs to be done. And I don't know why teachers in school or even churches shy away a lot from the topic of sex education. And even if they're giving it, it's not as much as it should go. So I think one of the reasons is the education, the sex education that is not being given. Because even I watch the news a lot. And when they talk about cases of unwanted pregnancies, I notice that there's a consistency. Most of them, of course, they're talking amongst young children who are in class 7, class 8. And when they're giving their stories, they would always say they didn't know. For them, it was just some form of pleasure with the significant other or something of the sort. So they actually don't know of the implications of the unwanted pregnancy, which is really sad. And in most of these schools are the ones in the rural areas. So I think there's a lot of sex education that's not being given. So that's one of the reasons. In cases of rape, of course, if you're raped, then that's automatically an unwanted pregnancy. You didn't see it coming, So yeah. And of course, contraceptives. If you don't use a contraceptive, or for you the sex is just for pleasure, and the child comes, of course it's an unwanted pregnancy. Or inconsistency in the use of the contraceptive, or not using it well. Because if you look at, of course in Kenya it wouldn't be a major issue because the contraceptives are there. But when you go to countries like South Africa, there's actually the access to the contraceptive itself is a problem. So I think also it depends, but yeah, either they're using it, you're using it wrongly, or you're not using it at all, so definitely the pregnancy will be unwanted.
So you've introduced something really really profound here. Contraceptives among young adults. Let's talk of university students, of which you are in that bracket.
Yeah.
What's your view on contraceptives? Do you think, in your opinion, it boosts sexual morality, or in a sense it gives people the green light to go ahead with doing whatever they want to do, because they know back at the back of the mind that there is some there is some backup, there is some plan B?
Yeah.
What's your view on that?
With the use of contraceptives, it's about the individual and how they evaluate the use of contraceptives, because I think mostly the Christian church and of course the Muslim the church is the basis under which contraceptives are determined whether they are wrong or right.
Really?
Mostly that's where someone would base their so the church would either say the Christian church, of course the Christian church is totally against contraceptives, and they're like, it has a lot of negatives, because if you use the contraceptive, it means that you're putting the matter of a human life in your own hands, of which that somehow breaks a connection with the procreator, because if you take matters into your own hands, yet we know God is the giver of life, then that there's a connection that's been broken, and they feel like it's also not just, it goes against natural life. So it's if you want to use a contraceptive, if you want to use protection, then use the natural family planning. But for contraceptives, they're totally against that. But we have churches which are a bit liberal, so they say, you can use contraceptives so long as you're using it in the right way, or it's not for promiscuous behavior as such. So I think it's also an issue of why are you using the contraceptives, and who? Because we're talking about young adults. A 30-year-old could be a young adult. A 28-year-old in different contexts. Different countries have their different definitions of a young adult. So, but if we're talking about someone who's like 18, I feel like that's a child, and their developmental stages is a bit where they are, and making sound decisions, they're not yet there. So I would say for the use of our contraceptives, they're not yet there. But when you talk about an adult who is married, and they feel like the use of a contraceptive is so that they can control, maybe
they can plan their family.
So I think also it depends on who and why.
You're saying that we should leave the use of contraceptives to the liberty of the individual, right? So what are the moral implications of that?
Of course, when I say you should leave that option to an individual, I mean a young adult is a person I'm imagining who is able to make sound decisions, responsible decisions, not just a split-second decision that would cause a great impact. So of course the moral impacts are there, because once you're free to use our contraceptives, then there's so much widespread of immorality, of sexual immoral behaviors, definitely, because if I feel like I can use a contraceptives and I'm not gonna get any STI, or I'm not gonna get pregnant, then there's a lot of freedom in that, and therefore there's a lot of widespread of immorality. I can do what I want, no matter how immoral it is. I am protected,
So now how can we deal with that negative impacts of sexual immorality, which is related to the use of contraceptives?
I think sex education and education on contraceptives would be a way to go about it.
All right, let's go to abortion. What's your view on abortion, especially among young adults?
I know abortion is a bit of a sensitive topic. It's not just something that you just say, it's so wrong, and this is why, You also ought to ask yourself why an individual chooses to abort. Because in countries like the US, abortion is legalized. So you ask yourself why abort, So like they would say, like, maybe controlling, for them it's a way of controlling population. Others say it's like empowering a woman, because when you give a woman the chance to decide what to do with their body, because it's their body at the end of the day, it's like a form of empowerment. And I think also the most important question is when do you consider a human life a human life? When does a human life begin? Is it at conception or is it after birth? When is it viable? For me, it's at conception.
All right.
The moment conception has begun, then human life has begun. So for me, that's the point of when human life begins. Yeah, so, but I think it's also a matter of responsibility, because people say, if you've gotten to the point of getting pregnant, then take responsibility for that child. So yeah, it depends on that, taking responsibility for a choice that you made.
Young adults battle with various addictions, running from drugs, sex, and whatever it is. So let's talk of pornography as an addiction. What's your view on the moral status of pornography?
Okay, according to me, I would say pornography is wrong, especially because of, when you engage in pornography, it's like the respect that you have for a human being is a bit, it's a bit low. So I would say that it's wrong, but also in the context of who, I like to ask that a lot, because for a young boy or a young girl who's about 18 or 19, I feel like it's not right, especially if you're doing it a lot. The more you engage in the pornography, in watching the pornography or whatever sense, because there's watching the pornography and it's also engaging in it. The more you do it, the more you want it, and I feel like it's an addiction which should be worked on. But then again, others would argue that for two individuals who are grown-ups and they are willingly engaging, that there's nothing wrong as long as it's not causing any harm, then it's okay, because they would argue that it's a form of self-pleasure. The same way someone would engage in drinking alcohol or smoking is the same way they would engage in pornography, that it's a form of self-pleasure. But for me, I don't know, I think it's wrong. Yeah, especially for young people.
Alright, so
yeah.
For somebody who was already, he just woke up and found himself is deep into that addiction and they're struggling to come out of that, what will be your advice to them? How can they, what advice will you give them that can help them come out of that addiction?
Okay, for someone who is addicted, because you've used the word addiction, I feel like
and they are willing.
They are willing, yeah, they are willing, of course. It would require a lot of work, but since they are willing, that's really a good thing. So for one, they can see a counselor, of course. I think that helps a lot because if it's an addiction, it's not something you just stop. But once you see a counselor, it's a process. So there are certain ways that they help you and mechanisms of dealing with the pornography. Like if you're used to watching pornography like 10 times in a day, you could start by watching seven times in a day, or maybe 5 times. It's a gradual process, but seeing a counselor would help a lot. I think it would help a lot, yeah.
One last one. This might be a little bit sensitive due to the debates that are going on around the world and in our circles and society.
Yeah.
It's about the issue of sexual orientation. In your opinion, among this debate, joining this debate, what will be your answer if someone asks you, is sexual orientation a choice?
Is sexual orientation a choice? Wow, I think that's a very it's a very delicate matter. For one, it's not just something that you just, like I said, verbalize. You have to put a lot of thinking into it. But is sexual orientation a choice? I would say yeah. I think it's entirely the responsibility of an individual. As long as for you feel like it's it's a responsible decision, and you've made it from a point of, it's a sound decision. Yeah, I think it wholly depends on it's a responsibility of an individual. But in most cases that I've seen on sexual orientation, especially among young boys and girls, because I remember there's a lecture I had this week actually, and the lecturer was talking about a young boy of 9 years old. I think it was in the US, I'm not sure. He wanted to change his gender. He was born male, but he wanted to become a female. So actually he went through the whole process of surgery and all. And somewhere along the way, they regretted it. But then also one question he asked that I felt was really important. A 9-year-old gets to decide, you know, I think
I want to be a girl
yeah,
now.
so it's a bit of a
It's a little extreme.
So for young people, sometimes it's confusion. It's experiment. They want to experiment, and for some it's a matter of, I've had so much bad experiences with this gender that I feel like
I'd rather stay this other side.
So why are you changing, you know? So I think it's also a choice, because even if you look at adults who have decided to change their sexual orientation, because look at the population, most of the guys who are changing their sexual orientation are the young adults, most of us young people in campus, but elder people, you know, they're more, so that would make you question a lot. Is it just a matter of choice? Is it just confusion? Does it just come with age? But all I would say is that it requires a lot of responsibility on the side of the individual. Yeah, so like, why would you do that? Yeah, so for me that's it.
So just a practical one. Your firstborn boy at the age of 11 comes back home one day and tell you, Mom, I feel like a girl and I want to live like a girl for the rest of my life. What will be your response?
I've actually never thought of that. But of course, seeing that I'm a counselor, and we're always told the same way you question heterosexuality is the same way you ought to question homosexuality. There's no bigger sin than the other, you know. So it's the same way if you ask me if your son was brought home with the police and he was caught stealing, you know, I would tend to work on them the same way. I wouldn't say this one is way worse than this. For me, that's how I operate. I question both of them on the same level. So if it were my son, I would of course I would ask them if they're really sure about them and what led them to that decision.
Come on, this is an 11-year-old boy.
11-year-old boy.
Yeah, I'm not talking about a 35-year-old man.
Of course you're not talking about a 35, but still the same. I mean, times change and people become mature really fast because of the exposure. So even an 11-year-old, you'd think they know nothing, but they know a lot. So I don't know. That's why I've said I would really be cautious on asking them why. Because for an 11-year-old to know that, oh my God, I can be a boy, but I can feel like I want to be a girl, you know, then that means they have a lot of knowledge in that area. So maybe they're just bluffing, you know, but I wouldn't just ignore that. Yeah, I wouldn't. So I would question why and are you sure? Yeah, so I wouldn't just explode on them and be like, that's very wrong, you know, because that's what most people do. I remembered the other day on the news as well, there was a story of a high school, a boys' high school, and there were a group of boys who were found engaging in this whole homosexual behavior. And Matiang'i was, you know, he's the cabinet secretary for education, Dr. Matiang'i. And I was really cautious. I wanted to hear what he would say on regardless of that, in regards to that matter. And he was saying that for these boys, they still have a right to continue with their education. Let's not dismiss the fact that they still have to go on with their education. But why not take them to a day school so that when they feel like they want to engage in this homosexual behavior, they can do it from home. So take them to an environment which can be able to cater for that behavior. But don't dismiss the fact that they still have to go on with their education. So you see, he was not, he was a bit neutral on that. So I think that's how it should go, yeah.
So do you have any final word for our viewers? Given
I think
you're one of those who to some extent have some, you're on some level of life. The show is about peer mentorship, where notable young adults like you come to share what they have with the audience.
Okay, what I would say is that the issue of sexual morality is really broad. And when you come to breaking it down, like we have talked about contraceptives, pornography, abortion, when you look at all these, I think it goes back to the individual. And I think that it's very important to have a value system. Because if an individual has some sense of modesty, some sense of self-control, some sense of responsibility, that you know that for every action there's a consequence, there's an outcome. If you have that sense of value system, then you're always going to have it very easy in life. So I think it's very important to have a value system. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for her for having, exposed some of these topics and issues concerning sexual morality with us. And it's our hope that you have learned, at least you picked something that will help you to learn and grow. Now, on 6th of March, I'll be turning, how old? Just put it yourself. So on 6th of March, I'll be celebrating my birthday, and I want to offer a gift to you, my viewers. And this is the gift. A lot of people have been asking me, Sam, why can't you get hosted one day in one episode? Well, episode 10 is that episode where I will be hosted. Now, all the questions that you have concerning this show, concerning Sam, concerning anything that you feel Sam has an answer for it, just have it there on the comment section, or send me a message on Instagram, IHNDY series, Instagram, or Samuela or Sam Nabule. Any of those 3 accounts, I'll just get the DM and I will respond to your questions, hopefully. Without further ado, let's come to the conclusion of this episode. Irene, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful. I wish you all the best in your BA in Counselling Psychology.
Thank you.
They say that the world is broken and it needs people who can help heal. And part of those healers are not only doctors, but also counseling psychologists and guys who can help people, find back their way, find back their path.
Yeah.
And you've chosen a good cause, and I wish you touch a lot of hearts out there, whether as a student or as a professional counseling psychologist.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. May you be blessed.
Thank you as well for having me. It was such a pleasure to discuss some of these issues. I think it was a learning experience for me as well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share this video for others to learn and grow. Until next time, peace.